Good afternoon. This is the School Board of Lee County Board Workshop. The first item on the agenda is the Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board presentation on destination graduation. And presenting, we have, first of all, Mr. Ken O'Leary. Welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say, I always thought being on the school board must have been an easy job. After experiencing what you just went through, I could see that I was wrong about that. But my name is Ken O'Leary, and I'm the president of the Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board. And with me is Joe Paterno, who's our executive director of the Workforce Board. Kathy Royal is the mentor at the Cape Coral High School, and Patrick Comer is the mentor at Dunbar High School. I will be speaking to you about the overall program, and Joe will be speaking to you about how the program impacts Lee County. We wanted to meet with you this morning for a couple of purposes. First, to thank you for allowing our destination graduation program to be in your high schools and to update you on the program and its successes. Additionally, we will be requesting your future support as we strive to enhance and grow this worthwhile program for disadvantaged youth. Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board covers 5 counties in Southwest Florida: Hendry, Glade, Charlotte, Lee, and Collier counties. In 2009, the Board of Directors and the staff of the Workforce Board conceived a unique program to help our schools in their goal to increase high school completions. We named this program Destination Graduation. How does it work? The school staff identifies 25 students as being at the greatest risk of dropping out. Generally, these students are in the bottom 25% of academic progress. Students in the program and parents sign a contract containing behavioral and progress goals in the area of academic and workplace readiness skills. The workforce mentors provide work readiness training, one-on-one mentoring, and academic assistance. Additionally, the program provides incentives to attend school regularly to improve grades and graduate. One of our most popular incentives is our summer jobs program, where the student can participate in it if he is enrolled and participating in the program. In order to have an accurate comparison for effectiveness, we also asked the schools to identify another 25 at-risk students as a control group. We started the program with 2 high schools, Dunbar and Cape Coral in Lee County, in 2009, and since then we have added 13 more, including East Lee County, South Fort Myers, and Island Coast High School. This wouldn't have been possible without the assistance and ongoing support of Superintendent Dr. Nancy Graham, Principals Carl Burnside, Scott Cook, Brian Mangan, Melissa Lehner, Kristen Bueno, and their entire staffs. How are we doing? 94% of our high school seniors enrolled in destination graduation graduated with a high school diploma since the program inception in 2009. 182 new students entered the program between July 1st, 2013 and June 30th of 2014. 140 students participated in the summer youth employment program, and several students were retained by their employer and continue to work throughout the school year. In 2013, the last year we have all the data on, the graduation rate in the state was 76%. In Southwest Florida, the graduation rate was 73%. The destination graduation control group, which we talked about earlier, was 56%, and the destination graduation rate was 98%. So we basically came in and took 25 people with problems, and we got 98% of them to graduate. And to graduate is to receive a diploma. It is not getting a GED. Mm-hmm. What are our graduates doing now? Again, these percentages cover all 5 counties. 5% went into the military, 14% are in technical schools, 39% are employed, and 42% are in college. This program demonstrates when working collaboratively with our education and business partners, we can effect positive change and develop young people beyond what they ever envisioned as being a possibility, while ensuring Florida has a viable workforce for the future. I now turn over the microphone to Joe Paterno, who will address Lee County.
Good afternoon, school board members and Dr. Graham. Ken's told you most about Lee County. We have 5 schools right now, but one of the things I just want to really highlight is one of the things about the summer employment program is that they have to earn it. It's not a gift. They have to have good grades, they have to be studying, they have to have attendance records, they have to not have caused any trouble at the high school. So it's not just something that we give them. And what it has done for many of these young men and women, it's really the hook that got them active. It's some of the first times they've ever received a paycheck. And one of the things we do, because they're on my payroll, is that we make them go through a drug test and a background screening. And it was surprising for me that we have several individuals throughout the region that failed the drug test. And some people said they didn't think that was, I thought it was an issue. They thought that it was going to be a lot higher than what it was. So what we've done for those individuals is that we put them through kind of a rehab program, through an employee assistance program y'all talked about. And we said, you're going to go through this for a 6 or 7 week period, then when you come out, you're going to be retested, et cetera, and we want you off whatever you're on. And if you can test out, then we're still going to provide you an incentive. But the summer program really hooks them into believing that they can do something. You know, when they get a paycheck for whatever it might be, and we usually pay up to $9 an hour for summer employment. But the other thing about it is, working with the mentors, they try to determine what their career field may be. So I always use the example, if somebody said they wanted to be a plumber, we're going to put you with a plumbing contractor. You're going to find out your sophomore, junior year in high school if that's truly your vocation and your career you want to take. If you want to go on to be a doctor, we'll try to find a way to get you into the medical facility. So it really is to us, the caveat that keeps them engaged. And then once they become engaged, they see the benefits of what an education can do. Because statistics, and I think many of you have probably seen them, that you earn this much if you have no high school diploma. You earn this much if you have, in a lifetime, if you have a GED, this much if you have a high school diploma. But if you have a second degree, a 2-year degree, and a 4-year degree, et cetera, your lifetime earnings increases by almost $1.5 million for your lifetime. So when they see numbers and number becomes reality to them, it's staggering to them. For Lee County last year in 2013, Ken was talking about, our graduation rate was 95%. They said for the region we had 98, but for Lee County it was 95%. And in Lee County, the students, we had 59% of them go on to a university or to Florida Southwestern and to a couple other places. We had 3% attend a vocational school, and we had 38% that became employed. And again, a lot of those are working for the companies that they were for that would not have had that opportunity in the past. I gave you a 5-year, just kind of a synopsis of our operating. And I think one of the things that's important to our board of directors is on our July board meeting, those students who have graduated have an opportunity to come to our meeting. We invite them, we invite their parents. And what's happened, if you'll notice in there, there's pictures of them. They have come in caps and gowns. Mm-hmm. And this last year, the 2 rural communities actually brought a school bus over and brought all their graduates and the parents. So it was really, really a neat kind of adventure. And I know Patrick and Kathy will tell you some real specific stories, but one of the things that struck us, several parents came up and said, I just want to thank you all, because they said we saved their son or daughter. I said, we didn't do it. I mean, their son or daughter had to make that decision on their own. We gave them the guidance to get them going. But they really came up and said, if they hadn't have been, those individuals would probably be in the juvenile justice system or the correctional institution, and that would not be healthy for our whole economy. So just a little something positive for you. And who's going, Patrick? I'm going to let Patrick tell you a couple success stories that we have at some of the schools we've got. Thank you.
The students that we get, besides it being low, they got to be very low income. Workforce Investment Act, very, very low income generally on food stamps. And they have to have another risk factor, been in juvenile justice, maybe have a baby, they're pregnant or parenting, foster care, homeless, a lot of issues, things like that. Our group, they don't qualify typically for AVID, they don't qualify for Take Stock, they don't qualify for Bright Futures. I don't really think there's much there available for these. These are the kids that probably, a lot of my teachers I know want to want to choke them. But I'll give you a good example. A young man we enrolled the first year, Billy. Billy had a 1.77 GPA, a Haitian young man, struggling with reading like a lot of our students who were born speaking English, but he was still struggling with that. Got him as a sophomore. And Billy said, Mr. Cormer, I'll be honest with you, the only reason I even come to school is for the food and to play football. Well, he couldn't play football because he didn't have the GPA even. So really, the truth is, he came for the food, breakfast and lunch, and to hang out with us, socialize and that sort of thing. But this program is so much more than workforce skills. I'm dad in school. At least that's how I started. Now I say I'm granddad in school. The kids need a connection. They need that somebody really, truly is there for them. Billy started bringing his GPA up, got him within spitting distance of 2.0. Got Carl in. We got Mr. Daniels in. We made a bargain, made an agreement to get him in his junior year to play football, the spring football. They put him out there, but they told him, Mr. Comer's fighting for you. Don't you disappoint Mr. Comer. And he didn't. Billy's GPA started at 1.77. He played senior football in his senior year. On senior night, when they call their parents out on the field with him and they write something, say something nice, Billy asked me to stand up with him out on the field and say something nice. Billy graduated with a 2.43 GPA. I talked to him just recently. I knew he'd gone to Kaiser because we still track and still, he raps now some too, and he's not nice raps. And I tell him, I'm going to tell your mama what you're rapping, Billy. No, don't tell my mom. But Billy now, he graduated from Kaiser, and he's working in Lee County as a physical therapist. So, there's increased income coming into our county in terms of sales. Just in every way, in a positive way. One other quick example of a girl I've got now that just shows a little bit about our day. Got her as a sophomore. She's now a junior, and she was a snot. Just pretty much every one of her teachers really she was an ISS all the time. And so one of her teachers, an English teacher, called me down and said, Mr. Cormer, you need to come down here and talk to her because she was disrupting the class. I told her to move, and she said no. So I talked with her, and I go, well, what planet do you tell a teacher no? If you do that on your job in the summer, supervisor, you're done. But we hadn't built a relationship. We didn't. So anyways, I started going to her classes all the time so that her teachers didn't kill her. And so one day, that teacher, English teacher, he just took me outside and he says, Patrick, I'm going to tell you. He said, I've been working with inner city kids all my life. And he said, I've never said this before, but I'm going to say it about her. She's evil. She is evil. Give me time. Kept working with her. In his class another time, he told the students, I want you to write an essay about anything you want. She has a little blankie that she has, and she just pulled it up her head. I'm not writing no essay. I don't want to. She put her head down. I said, come on, write an essay. She says, I don't want to write an essay. I said, write about your brother. Her brother died of cancer a couple years ago. That's the advantage that we have, is that we're in an intimate group. We know the family. She immediately perked up. She wrote her essay about her brother, how she missed him, what she thought of him, all this. The teacher stopped me a few days later and he said, I want to apologize. I didn't know. She's not evil. Continuing with that girl, I was sure she worked here at the school board, by the way. She was one of the ones that came in here and worked here. I was scared to death she was going to get fired. They were going to get called up and said, she told us no. But she didn't. She got rave reviews, and we used that to work off, bringing that ethic on the summer job, bring it back to school. As a workforce, you get an assignment, homework, classwork, bring it in. She started off she also was a 1.7 something. She's now at a 2.4 something. She's brought her GPA up a lot. And she's doing good, she's wonderful, and it's just that day-to-day thing. And thank you for the privilege to work within the schools. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. See the passion these mentors have, and it exists in all of the schools that we're in. I want to finish up. Thank you again. Part of the reason why we are here is that most of this funding that comes down, we spend $750,000 a year in Lee County for this program. This funding comes down through Washington. They're up there now tweaking numbers around that impacts us. We've gone to the state legislature to talk to them about some assistance to make sure we can keep at least these 15 schools in. So when you're talking to the state legislatures, we've talked to all of them. If you'd be kind enough just to mention the fact that, Destination Graduation performs a very, very good service for not only the students in Lee County, but also in the 5-county area. We hope at some point in time to be able to have the program in all 28 high schools in the 5-county district, but we got a little bit of a rough year coming up here. So anything you can do to help us, we would appreciate it.
Board members, anybody want, Mr. Toiber?
Well, Mr. Comer, I mean, you were passionate when you were on the TV, but this is off the rail. I mean, this is good stuff. My question: are you still doing? Do you bring them in? Are you still in the fire with the fire department out there in Lehigh? Do you bring them in for that opportunity as well, or?
No, I'm not with the fire department. I got laid off in 2009 with 38 other people, but then I got picked up in 2009 November to do this, which has been a real joy. But I have used that. I've had young men that I've gotten in at some of the fire departments, and I'm really, because, honestly, there's not very many minorities in there, and I'm trying to get some of our young people interested in that and recognize the great career. City of Fort Myers has been awesome with us and partnering with us, and actually I should have another young man in at the fire department again this summer, as I did, not last summer, I think summer before that.
Thank you, and that's why I ask, because it is a great career, and we do need to have that as an opportunity. I just want to say, and I'll let the other board members speak, but I think it's great what you guys did. You talk about you gave the guidance, to make them succeed, and I don't believe that's it. You gave them the opportunity. You gave them the feeling of self-worth. You gave them the feeling of pride, and the resources and the mentorship to know that they matter, and that's just great. To hit that sector. I mean, it's a great program, and I appreciate what you guys do, and that's it. I just think it's great.
Well, I just have a question. There's no contact information in here? And just in case there are other mentors out there who might be interested in working with this subgroup, are you in need of mentors?
Right now, we are not, because we have all 15 high schools filled.
Okay.
We're hoping if we can able to expand it, because our goal is to get it to 28 high schools. And our ultimate goal from our board is to show how successful this is in 28 high schools, and that the numbers, if the numbers truly show that, then we ought to go to our state legislature and State Department of Education and say, listen, we've got a project to catch these young men and women before they drop out of school, before they become nuisance or trouble. Let's get them in, get them to a high school diploma, and let's see if we can't work this process through and make it a statewide initiative. What we do is when we add new schools, we do post and advertise the job for mentors, and we go through a selection process. But right now, we have all 15 high schools fully staffed with the mentors. But I'll make sure our contact information, I'll make sure that you have all that. But it's really just the Workforce Development Board at our offices, and we'll get you all the data and information you need. This was put together really for some of our legislative people. We wanted to make sure they had the numbers and et cetera.
Mrs. Dozier?
I started to say Joe, but Mr. Paterno, we used to have a board member that served on this, and I really don't accurately remember the historical reason why our board member got off of that board. I don't remember that. You do?
I do.
Share that with me.
Well, what's happened when it used to be that a representative from one of the school districts would serve.
Mm-hmm.
Then the state legislature came in and said, I don't know if you remember, but back about 6 or 7 years ago, one of my counterparts got in big trouble, hit a lot of paper. The governor decided that we need to make some changes. So they said they wanted to downsize all the boards.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, we're not going to have all the educational partners, you now have one. So what we've done, since we're only allowed to have one educational representative on our board, we've gone to the Alliance of Educational Leaders that you all are part of and said, we're going to use the chair of the Alliance of Educational Leaders to represent all the school districts as well as all the universities, private schools, because in the old days we had to have a school district, a university that provides certificates, a university that provides degree, and a private college or university that provided a certificate. But in addition to that, the federal law says we must have a minimum of 51% to represent the business community. So our boards were getting to be 40, 45, 48 members, which were just getting unwieldy to try to get quorums. So the state law changed it based upon some things that happened in other parts of the state. And that's why so the representative is actually the chair of the Alliance of Educational Leaders.
If you think it's difficult being the chair of this one, try when you have 41 members.
I just want to say thank you very much for bringing a really bright spot to this board this afternoon. Appreciate your
We're
presentation.
glad we could do it, and we really appreciate your all support of the program and initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Moore, yes.
Just as they're getting ready to speak, I just want to share with you what you're going to get today. I'm going to call an executive summary of the work of the task force. There is a full report with lots of notes, and this is the culmination of all that information. Mr. Moore will be sending that report to you, I think right after this meeting. Is that right? Okay. So you'll have it. This is the executive summary of that. So if you have heard something outside of this arena and you're wondering where it is, it'll be in that report probably.
Well, I'm going to say welcome, Mr. Bauer. Welcome, Mr. Snell. Carson Young. Hi there. I'm glad to see a student here. That's fantastic.
And one of your students.
I know he is. Yeah. And Mr. Mora. We are really looking forward to this presentation. So thank you for being so patient this afternoon. And you have the floor, Marshall,
Great.
till I put the hook out there.
Yeah. Board members, Dr. Graham, Mr. Martin, first of all, thank you on behalf of the task force for forming this task force. This is the High School Academic Program Planning Task Force summary. As Dr. Graham pointed out, I think that was to alleviate any fears that Marshall's going to get up here and talk forever, which I am not. We are going to change a bit before I start talking to you a little bit about the order in which we were going to do this. We're going to move Mr. Young up second to speak to you because he has some academic matters that he has to attend to, and that first and foremost is the most important thing for him to deal with. You will be hearing, as indicated from me, I will be doing the opening and then the closing, then Mr. Young, then Mr. Mora, and then Mr. Snell, and then me again, I guess. I want to just kind of point out what this whole thing was about, just to remind you, and which I did every meeting when we started this task force with the group. Before I do that, I want to outline for your attorney that we did follow all the rules and regulations, that every one of these meetings was publicly noticed. At the beginning of every one of these meetings, I allowed for public comment, and then we proceeded with going forward with this. The reason, I believe, that we were asked to form this task force by this board was because of the projected high school need in the south and east zones within the next 3 to 5 years. Our task was academic programming within these buildings, and as I pointed out to the task force at the beginning of every one of these meetings, we were not there to discuss where. It was not a site committee. Other committees were doing that, thank God. Our job was really to make some recommendations to you with regard to the programs within those buildings. So, what we did as a school board appointed task force is we analyzed local, regional, national, and global workforce needs. We identified specific needs of the community where schools may be located. Our purpose as a task force was to examine needs of the community and the business community and investigate relevant academic programming for planned high schools. After school board general then offer you the recommendations, and that's what we're here today. I want to reiterate that this was a board made, or a task force made up of many members of the community. Christine Ross is here from the Bonita Springs Area Chamber of Commerce. The Lehigh Area Chamber of Commerce also was represented within this, representing those two zones within the school district. They, I know this from both of these leaders, took it back to their membership and got involvement from them, so it reached, the tentacles reached even further than the group that was involved. That being said, this task force kept growing and growing and growing as we were going through it. You can see all of the members of the task force as they are listed up there. I submit to you there were 3 most important members represented here today by Carson Young, but we also had Yasmin Telez and Chris Sutherland, Chris represented Dunbar High School, Yasmin represented East Lee County High School, and Carson is from Estero High School. When we set up the different areas with regard to the task force focus, I allowed members of the committee, if you will, of the task force to decide where their expertise was and go to those various committees. With the exception of the students, we wanted to spread the wealth and make sure that they were on all of the, or at least 3 of the different committees. So they were, and I walked around, I didn't give any input, you'll be happy to hear. I just was the facilitator of this. I want to stop here and say one thing to you. You have an awesome group of people that work for you, led by Mr. Mark Mora, who was the co-facilitator of this task force, and there were many principals, as you can see, that were listed up there, and other school district employees that worked side by side with the members of the community so that we could get to you today. We divided it into 4 key assessment areas and hence 4 subgroups that worked separately but then came back together at the end of each meeting and reported out. They were workforce requirements, community needs, academic program offerings, and educational facilities. The way that we did this, so you know, is, and so you have some confidence in this process, is we pulled everyone together. We met at the foundation's offices. We met on several different occasions. We'd have a general reporting out about what the day was about. Then we would divide up into those subcommittees. They would go meet separately, then come back and report out to the larger group. We encouraged them in between to continue those committee meetings and indeed, or subcommittee meetings, and indeed some of them did meet and then come back and report out so that this work could get done in a timely fashion. It was a lot of work to do within a 3 or 4 month period, with a lot of people setting aside their regular day job, if you will, to come together with regard to this. So I will end it and then bring Carson up here by saying again, thank you. I think it had a lot of foresight on your part to bring the community and get them involved in their high schools and what they felt were the needs in terms of programs within their high schools. The South Zone was extremely active with regard to community involvement with regard to this. I know that they were sending out all kinds of surveys and getting input from all different kinds of people, parents, the business community, the community at large. So that being said, that's kind of the framework for how we operated, and now I'm going to turn it over to Carson.
Keep talking.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Bauer. So I was tasked with the subcommittee of academic program offerings, so I'll try to be brief in summary of what we found. So as the board knows, currently high school students are offered a multitude of academic programs. We have AVID, which supplies that extra push for students who are on the edge of a decision of whether or not to go to college or be satisfied with that high school diploma. We have our career or professional academies, like at South Fort Myers High School, they have the Car Mechanical Academy or the Veterinary Academy. And of course, our advanced academic programs that are very rigorous, such as Fort Myers IB, the ACE program, and AP. And also we asked that the board consider a possible Center for the Arts. So we'll be getting into a little bit more detail with this in the South Zone, beginning with the rigorous advanced academic programs. We noticed as a task force that there is no AP International Diploma program in the South Zone. Fort Myers High School has their International Baccalaureate, and Estero High School, my high school, has a very successful ACE program. In order to not provide any competition for these programs, we feel it appropriate as a task force to recommend that this AP International Diploma program be considered as the academic rigor program for the South Zone. A little bit about it, it's similar to ACE and IB in that you can, students can earn college credit, and it's a diploma program, so they'll have a diploma if they pass enough tests. But this focuses specifically on an international curriculum, where a series of tests in different areas will have to be passed with a special focus on foreign languages. So that is pretty neat. So AVID, as a task force, we determined should probably be in any new school that is built because it provides that access to the critical academic and social support that several students need. Okay, so in the East Zone school, we have a similar issue as the South Zone. We have Riverdale High School with their IB program and Lehigh Senior High with their ACE program. For this zone, the task force recommends that the AP Capstone program should be investigated by the board. Again, it's a diploma program where students can earn college credit by taking a variety of AP courses. But it does differ from the APID program in that it is more research-based. There's 2 tests that students will have to pass in AP Seminar and AP Research, and the goal, from what I gathered when I researched this, was to push students to be able to conduct research in their undergraduate years at college, which not a lot of students do. So this could be something that is really beneficial for East Zone students. Again, it wouldn't provide any competition with the ACE or the IB programs that are already in place in that zone. Something I want to bring up real quick, just a personal anecdote. I went to Bonita Springs Middle School. Having one of these academic rigor programs is extremely important. When I was in middle school, the students who really excelled and really took rigorous courses and obviously wanted to continue that in high school, almost all of them went to Fort Myers High School at the point when I was in middle school. The reason for that being, Estero High School did not have an ACE program. It did not have that advanced academic academy. So it was called the brain drain. And I think we really need to avoid that with these new schools and definitely include some sort of rigorous program. Of course, the AVID program should be offered in the East Zone School as well. This is something I'm pretty passionate about. Island Coast High School currently offers a natural resource academy. Natural resources is something that I think would excite a lot of students to study. You already have that curriculum in place at Island Coast, so it wouldn't be too tough to form a curriculum that's based off of that. And because the idea of natural resources and teaching our students about that is so broad, we don't specifically have to follow that curriculum that's already in place at that school. And if they were offered in both zones, which the task force seemed to recommend that it should be done, you could have differing programs. The one that tends to the more rural atmosphere of the East Zone, that would tend to the more urban atmosphere of the South Zone. So currently at Island Coast, they've teamed up with the University of Florida and the South Florida Water Management District to offer some classes in aquaculture and various other environmental studies. So that would be something that is really neat, especially when you consider the possible locations of the new schools. There's a lot of talk about them possibly being an environmentally sensitive area. Students need to learn about where their school is, and a natural resource academy could be a great way to do that. Health sciences, I'll touch briefly on that. We already have academies that are similar to that in medical academies, but a health science academy is only found in the East and West Zone currently. So that should be something that should be investigated, especially for the South Zone, and a potential partnership with a minor league baseball club like the Miracle or even the Red Sox when they're down here with spring training, or the Everblades hockey team, could be something that really excites students and gets them into these programs. And of course, a information technology academy, with the informational technology, the technology field being the way it is, developing so quickly, offering so many jobs, it's always hiring. It's something that new schools need to have, is what we determined as a task force. But it should be noted that schools in these zones, most of them already do have a information technology academy. Dunbar has a great one. Montero has one that has hundreds of students in it. So we've noted on the board there that some specific areas where gaps could be filled, where those other information technology academies are not quite teaching their students specifically in areas such as cybersecurity or web development. So we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, and here's something that I know Dr. Graham is excited about. The school district is the largest employer in Lee County. We have to hire tons and tons of teachers, but we only have one teaching academy in our entire district, and that is currently at Ida Baker. South Fort Myers High School used to have one. I've talked to a few students there, and it was really popular there. Students loved it. They enjoyed being in the classes. They were excited to learn about how to be a teacher. I can tell you firsthand that many of my peers have wanted to be a teacher since they were little kids. And giving them the opportunity to explore that field in secondary school rather than waiting till post-secondary school could be a big advantage we have in this district, and something that the board should consider to put into these new high schools. You're going to create a positive feedback loop of sorts where you're already training students in high school to be the best teachers they can be, and then they go off to college, get their degree, and come back to this district to be a teacher. If we include these teaching academies, it's not a stretch to say that we're going to have a better pool of teachers to hire from as a result. Okay, and here's the final part of the academic program offering, something I don't personally know a lot about, but it's a very cool idea. The task force was approached by a business community for a potential partnership in an aviation or aeronautics program. And obviously, that is not currently offered in our district. So I think it would be a very neat thing to have to pull students into that school, because we do have school choice in this district. It'd be a very nice attractor of sorts. And there are programs similar to this in the state at Escambia High School and Lele High School. So there would be some basis to form your curriculum off of. It's not to say that we'll be putting planes in the air, but it would be very neat to start to teach students who have an interest in aviation what it takes to go into that field, and maybe how to start working on various parts of airplanes. So that really wraps it up for academic program offerings. I will turn it over to Mr. Mora to talk about workforce requirements and community needs. Thanks.
Mark, can I just interject? If Carson needs to go, maybe we ought to just give board members an opportunity to talk to Carson, and then we can let him go. So, board members, questions, comments for Mr. Young? Mrs. Dozier?
Well, I just want to say thank you. Boy, you got in there and rolled your sleeves up and did a lot of work, and I appreciate that. And, it's always good to hear the perspective of a student, because all of you are out there with your peers every day, and we are servicing your peers, or we are providing for your peers. And we need to know what's being talked about on the streets, if you will, so that we can provide the programs that are necessary that will enhance your attention span, and you will want to stay in school. I mean, that and be successful. I was so glad to hear that excitement in your voice about the aviation program, because we already have a community member that has said, if y'all will start the program, I'll get an airplane donated. I mean, he said, you've got to build the hangar, build the location, and so we've already got people out there that are willing to start these programs, and people in the community are seeing the needs for some of these programs, and their willingness to come forward and say, hey, let me pony up, and I'm going to give you a jet, so and so and so and so. I can't even tell you the numbers that he said, but anyway, he told me some numbers. So, I mean, we've got all of these opportunities, and that's just one of the many programs. And I was so glad also to hear you talk about the fact that we need teaching academies, because we talk about growing our own. How better to grow your own than to start with students in the high school? So, I mean, I think that there should almost be either a club, because I know, and that's kind of dating some of us in the room, we used to have a club that was called Future Teachers of America. And who laughed about that? Mr. Toiber, stop it. But that was, and you had like clubs, and you joined those clubs, and that was where you learned, about how to be a future teacher. He's still down there laughing about my age. And now we have the opportunity to have these academies kind of meshed in with the everyday curriculum. So thank you for saying that that's an important part of it. And again, thank you so much for your service on this committee. It was very valuable and very important. Thank you.
Board members, any other comments? No? I would just like to say to Dr. Graham, it would be great if we could figure out a way to share a link with Carson's presentation to the Bonita community, so that they can get a sense of what has been done to explore what we should be, what we're thinking about at this high school. Because I am just bowled away, not only with the work that got done, but your presentation as a student. I would love the community to see you, a student, talking this way about what we're trying to accomplish in not only the South Zone, but in Lee County as a whole. So that's my
I don't see
comment.
why we can't put that on the website, and we can mark where it starts, but the whole presentation can be put on there. And I just want to say, I was in Future Teachers of America, Mr. Toiber, and before that, I was a TOT, which was Teacher of Tomorrow. So I'm with you,
I was just
Mr.
laughing
Ozier.
because
I'm
you
with
know, I
you.
remember in the 70s. I mean, that was the big. I mean, that was all of the kids in school.
The cool
That was
kids.
That way,
Yeah.
it was a big deal. Yeah, it was a big deal. I just remember, but that was our generation, and I just laughed. That was so long time ago.
And I don't know if it's still going on, but I remember Janet Sherlin had, except she's gotten remarried, I can't remember her new last name. Anyway, had started a Future Teachers of America club there in middle school. So how awesome to have it happen in middle and then in high school.
Is it still active?
Anyway, thank you very much for your part in this, for giving it a lot of time, and I know you did, and a lot of thought, and I appreciated your personal observations too as we went along. So enormous contribution. Very much
Hi,
appreciated.
Carson.
It's grateful to be a part of it. Thanks so
Thank you
much.
so much.
I'm going to head out and take my math test. Thank you.
Good luck on your math test.
Top that, Mr. Mora. I think if you haven't figured out, you have to go back in your
Yeah.
PowerPoint. Okay, I think it starts on slide 9, maybe? Is that what
Yeah, yours, I went ahead and edited our slides here, so yours I probably didn't get a chance to. We put Carson first, and Reggie owes me one because he was originally supposed to follow up Carson, and now I am, so he's a hard man to follow.
Where do we need
I
to
want to
go?
also suggest
I think
that
it's-
when
are
we
you-
looked,
I think it's slide 9.
Workforce,
Yes,
Yeah.
workforce requirements. So you have to go backwards from where you were.
we're getting there.
okay. While you're navigating back to those slides, I will offer also the Academic Program Offerings Group looked at the equitable distribution of programs throughout the district. So we have equity and also looking at replicating programs that have already been proven to be successful. So that was part of their charge as well. So I'm here to talk to you this afternoon about the workforce requirements, and just to put it to you, our academic programs are not really designed to prepare students for the workforce, but what they're supposed to do is provide them some access or some exposure to possible careers, as well as develop the skills that they'll need to be successful in the future workplace. And one of the things that this particular group looked at are what those workforce requirements will be in the future. So not only looking at what we have for jobs here in our county and in Southwest Florida right now, but what they'll be into the future. So jumping to the slide here, the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity has suggested that the largest industries in Southwest Florida, which are no surprise to us, are the retail trade, healthcare, social assistance, accommodations and food service, and construction. Now, the amazing number here is this accounts for more than 50% of Southwest Florida's employment. When the Southwest Florida Workforce Overview Study looked at what the fastest growing industries were going to be over the next 8 years, or between 2013 and 2021, they found that the healthcare and then social assistance occupations were the fastest growing sector, with construction, retail trade, and accommodation and food services pulling up there behind them. Also note professional, scientific, and technical services is a growing industry here in Southwest Florida, which is an indication that we're diversifying as far as a workforce. The Horizon Council's Workforce Task Force looked at these fastest growing industries and occupation and looked at what we have for workforce members, and there are certainly some employment gaps that exist or will exist over the next 8 years. In the areas of healthcare and social assistance, such as speech-language pathologists and physical therapists, certainly projecting a shortfall there. Employment gaps in construction amongst first-line supervisors and carpenters, especially as our economy picks back up. We'll be building once again, which makes Reggie happy, and those folks in the construction trade will be at high demand. As Carson mentioned, information technology is also a growing profession in our area. Specialties such as networking, telecom, wireless mobility services, web development, and database management will be the occupations that will be in the most demand over the next few years. Information system occupations as well, just like IT. These lie in the security administrator, systems programmer, systems analyst, and programmer analyst areas. We have examples of that right here in our district, where we're projected to lose almost 50% of our IS staff over the next 5 years. And replacing them is a daunting challenge, since our workforce is not producing those type of employees at this time. And Carson articulated very well, education is a growing gap for us. We have folks that are out on the trail right now recruiting teachers out of state, because we just don't have that robust pool here in Florida. We are amongst the largest employers. It goes back and forth between Lee Memorial and us, but right now I think we are. We hire over 600 new teachers annually, and that's due to just growth, retirement, and just natural turnover. Just for some statistics from HR, since July 1st, 2015, we've hired over 671 teachers, 583 non-instructional employees, 9 administrators, and 2 board members who are sitting up here right now. We have a real critical need for highly qualified teachers in certain shortage areas. Amongst those are English and language arts, reading, exceptional ed, science, foreign languages, math, English for speakers of other languages. And we have an ongoing shortage of speech-language pathologists, which kind of echoes the gaps that the other organizations have identified. We also have gaps in skilled non-instructional employees here in the district, and maintenance with HVAC employees, and information and technology systems that we just talked about. So I want to move now that we have identified what the future workforce will look like here in Southwest Florida, it's also important to assess what our community looks like. We took a look at the students that currently live in both of these zones. So we're looking at East Zone students and South Zone students. And these are our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students in the South Zone, and in the East Zone we're looking at 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And we did that piece or segment of our student population because we're projecting these will be the students that fill those schools. So when you look at race and ethnicity, it's a lot of similarities here if you look at the Hispanic population, but there are some differences when you look at African American and the Caucasian race and ethnicity groups. When we look at FCAT reading and achievement, obviously we're looking at academic programming to understand what type of students that might land in these high schools. It's important to look at their achievement levels as they are right now. And these are the distributions of the FCAT reading levels 5 through 1 for each of the zones. Again, a lot of similarity here, but kind of a look at what we might be dealing with when these students reach the high school and what type of services and programs and academic supports we need to provide when they do reach high school. We did the same for FCAT math. These are the achievement level distributions from 5 to 1 or 1 to 5. Again, very similar distribution. There's some subtle differences here and there, but kind of growing the picture now of the type of students that we're going to have in these high schools. Free and reduced lunch gives us a good indicator of the socioeconomic status of the students that will arrive at these schools. So again, as you look through the numbers, you'll see a lot of similarities in the type of students that we'll be servicing at that time. An important consideration.
I think this data, when I first looked at it, it points out, we talk about the East Zone and South Zone being so very different, but if you look at this, we're really not.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially amongst our elementary age students, there's a lot of uniformity.
Wow.
And then we looked at limited English proficiency amongst our students, and the LZ rate is really the one that you want to look at. Those are the kids that are within the service areas now receiving services and aid. So again, a lot of similarities. South Zone 9.7% receiving services, so a little bit higher at that particular.
Mark, what is the LF, LYLZ?
The LF is for students that have received services that are being monitored, have exited the program. The same thing with LZ, but the LY are the ones that are currently receiving services, assistance with the second language. ZZ kids don't qualify for any services at all. Those are probably native speakers who don't speak a second language.
So once they've received services of any kind, they always have an L when you look at their record, and the second letter tells you where they are in the service continuum.
So roughly 10% of the students in the South Zone are receiving services for limited English proficiency at this point. We also want to assess what type of supports are available in the community for socioeconomic supports. There's a variety of supports that are available to them. They're well represented from the United Way all the way down to Human Services and Children and Families. So those type of services are quite available amongst the communities. We've conducted a parent interest survey based on some of the work and input from the work groups, and we surveyed academic programs, course offerings, and extracurricular activities. We looked at, right now, South Zone students that are enrolled 4th through 6th. Again, these are the students that, if we open up in 17-18, will probably make up most of the student composition at the time. And these are students that reside in S2 and S3 or go to school in S2 and S3. We looked at academic programs, and in the report you'll see all of the offerings that we put in the survey, but the two that surfaced as the top interests for parents were the APID diploma program that Carson described quite well, and the Center of the Arts program, so 63%, 19% there. We also looked at career academies, same group of students. Information technology surfaced as the most interested program for parents at 39%, health sciences right behind at 26%, and business administration at 14%. And lastly, we wanted to get an idea of what type of extracurricular activities that parents might want their students to be involved with. Internship opportunities surfaced as the top percentage getter, 54%, with TV production at 45% and dance at 39%.
Interesting.
We did the same survey to the business community located in S2 and S3. Same questions, same programs were prompted. The academic program area, they looked at APID program at 48% and the AVID program at 26%. Kind of mirrors what the parents were saying as well. As far as career academies, information technology surfaced as the top percentage, 35%, with health sciences and business administration right behind that. And again, extracurricular activities, internship opportunities was a resounding 86%. So it tells you the type of engagement that the businesses down there are looking for with our high schools.
And when do we plan to survey the East Zone businesses?
Yeah, the East Zone High School, and one of the limitations of the report here is that we didn't survey them, but it was recommended by the task force that we do it closer to the opening date. So we're anticipating an opening date at that school a year behind the South Zone so that we get more relevant and recent data, is to conduct the same survey with those parents and those businesses in that area sometime next year at this particular time. And I'm going to turn over the presentation to my colleague, Mr. Snell, for the educational facility section.
Slide 32 is where he starts.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Graham, Mr. Martin. I was very fortunate to be in Group 4, which was the educational facilities. We were the reality group, because we were the group that had to take all of the first 3 groups and make sure that they fit within the walls of our existing prototypes. Probably early on in meeting 2 or 3, everybody wanted this, this, and this, and we had to get in front of the group and say, okay, so now you're talking about a high school of 500,000 square feet and probably around 75 to 80 million in cost. So when those figures got thrown out, our regular high school is 312,000 square feet at around 50 to 55 million, depending on site. So we had to get back into the real world, and the report that you're seeing today, I'm happy to tell you that we can fit all of this into our current high school prototype, which is the Island Coast High School that was opened in 2008. There are a lot of things that we can do with our prototype to meet a lot of the academic needs and programs that we've talked about earlier in the presentation. One of the neat things that Carson talked about was the natural resource. And everybody knows all I've got to do is say 4 letters, DRGR, everybody starts getting the hives and everything, and that would be a great academy to have at Triple L based on what we've been through recently with those 4 letters. So I think everybody that's been involved in the high school can appreciate that. So those are kinds of programs that we can fit into the prototype that we have now. The district has a very versatile prototype that can meet a lot of different academic needs. It can meet the high-end academic programs that Carson was talking about earlier. It can also meet the workforce needs that Mark was just talking about. Ms. Dozier, you were talking about the aviation. We had a lot of conversations about that, and the way the aviation program is set at the high school level, this facility has the ability to do that part. Now, your working on airplanes would have to be like a field type thing at another facility, but the basic programs, our current prototype is able to house all of those needs. And so we're very happy that we have a prototype that has a lot of versatility. I want you to kind of think about it as a car. The prototype is the frame, the wheels, and the shell, and then you can kind of change what you want to put on the inside of that. And that's what we have with our prototype. We have the ability to, within that 312,000 square feet, to make the appropriate changes to where we can meet the high-end academic needs, we can meet the community workforce needs, and still give the taxpayers and citizens of South Lee County a facility that they'll be proud of for decades to come. One of the items that we're probably going to have to take a look at inside the facility is technology. And we're very fortunate that inside of our facility, we have room to move with technology requirements as they grow and expand every day. So it's not a situation where it's going to be, from our perspective, a construction perspective, a serious issue in meeting all of the technology needs that we need for both the academic programs and the workforce programs. So I know that I have to be short today because I don't know where Amity is. I don't want to get the look from her. But we feel like that at the end of the day, what the task force is recommending from a program perspective, the district has a facility that will meet all of those needs without any additional design cost or upgrade cost to what we already have on the drawings.
Thank you.
End where we started. Thank you. This was truly a task force made up of the community. Dr. Graham, at my invitation, came and opened it up and welcomed everyone and never came back. And your staff that worked hand in hand with the members of the community did not take a leadership role. They gave advice based on their expertise, obviously, but the community played an active role. I will also tell you that we drew upon other information being worked on in this community over the last several years in response to, from the business community, about what we need going on in our public school system. I serve on the Horizon Council Workforce Task Force. That information was made available, as well as the Workforce Now from the Southwest Florida group that's working on this from an even higher level. So there was a lot of information shared with the group. We talked about such things as we need to diversify the workforce coming out of our education system here. And, you know, the old question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? One of the things that has come forth in this area is we need to diversify so if we ever, God help us, have a great recession, we're not hit like we were hit before because we were very limited on what we do here in Southwest Florida. So all of those things were brought to bear. And the last thing I will say before I give you these general recommendations, one of the things that was often talked about and reported out on by the groups, and again, I will remind you that while we divided them into these 4 subgroups, when we started each one of the bigger meetings, we went over a synopsis of what happened before, divided it up, and then all the groups came back and reported out. So all groups knew what each other were doing. They weren't working in a vacuum. But one of the things that did come up from time to time, just so you know, if you hear from the community, Marshall left this out, there was a lot of talk about arts, and that when we talk about STEM, we should be talking about STEAM. And we assured them that arts are offered in our high schools. They may not be art schools like Cypress Lake High School, where that's a big emphasis, but that arts are offered, and everyone said, okay, we get that. So just so you know, we were never intending on leaving arts out of the larger picture here. So the recommendations from us to you are that the South Zone High School Task Force recommends consideration of both the AP International Diploma Program and the AVID program. The task force recommends consideration of career academies in the general areas of STEM, teaching, aeronautics, business administration, health sciences, and natural science. The East Zone High School, the task force recommends consideration of both the AP Capstone program and the AVID program. The task force also recommends consideration of career academies in the general areas, again, of STEM, teaching, aeronautics, architecture / construction, and natural resources. These general recommendations are based on information and data available within the scope of the work. Recommendations, findings, and research serve as a guidance for appropriate school district staff and stakeholders in their development of more detailed programs of study. That's a nice way of saying this is a general presentation to you. The more specific findings will be made available to you, as the superintendent pointed out, and hopefully also made available as you move forward to your staff in planning these high schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, Mrs. Dozier.
Well, as always, thank you for stepping up to the plate and your willingness to chair this committee. And I appreciate the recommendations for, and these are the two new schools that we're talking about being built, the South Zone High School and the East Zone High School. However, I have to be the little watchdog for the West Zone, even though I don't live over there, because one thing that I am a firm believer in is that all students from all around the county have to have access to all the programs that we are offering. So with that being said, thank you for your work in doing this, but my question is to Dr. Graham, and how will we incorporate these things so that the students in the West Zone will not be left behind, because these things have not been, right now we're not looking at a high school in the West Zone.
Some of these are the same that may already be in the West Zone, and they're listed based on that they're not, as Carson said, there's this one in this zone and this one in this zone. So when I'm thinking that the board's going to direct us now to take this information and come back with some recommendations for a course of study for each school. And when we do that, we will look at those areas, and if there's anything that isn't in the West Zone, then we'll have to look at what's in the West Zone and decide which schools could possibly take on some of those programs, because I know that it is our goal when we went to zones to replicate programs so that every zone does have exactly what you said. So that would be our intention. I have been adamant, might be a little strong, but that we need teaching academies in every zone, and we need more than one in each zone. And we had more, and I don't know what happened to them, so that's coming back. So fortunately, we have probably the strongest one we have is in the West Zone. So we will look at that and make every effort to, and we may have to get creative. For a long time we allowed Dunbar to take from more than one zone because their Microsoft program obviously is an expensive one and is a unique one. So we'll have to look at our student assignment system and may have to come back to you and ask for some alternates to that if that becomes necessary. But as we move forward and plan, equity among the zones will remain a priority. I think that's what you're asking. Okay.
Right.
Other comments? No? I'm going to just say, in addition to what Dr. Graham said, one of the things that I heard people talking about who are participating in the study is that we probably need to be looking at our programs on an ongoing basis, assessing the relevance and the efficacy of existing programs, and weeding out what's no longer relevant and bringing in what's new. So, and I heard conversation about that. So I assume that will be something that we.
One of the challenges, and I learned this several years ago when I was in that other county and we were looking at programming for schools, and I'm surprised Joe didn't mention, but I know it's in the limitations in this. We just skipped that slide, but workforce only goes out to 2021 as far as what the jobs are that are needed. So, we've said for years we're trying to prepare children for a world we don't really know and jobs that don't necessarily exist. So we're going to have to continually not only review what's in our schools, but look at what what CareerSource is telling us that the children need to be prepared for. And some of these we do need to be fluid, which is why we have to be really careful about the ones that require specific building modifications. Are we certain that that one's going to keep going? In the world, I know, I was with Ms. Dozier when we had one conversation about the aviation. That's becoming a critical need. Don't want to scare anybody when they get on a plane, but we were told the mechanics are retiring. And so we are going to have to continue to look at, are the ones we have relevant, but we need to be thoughtful about anything we go out and do a lot of renovation to the building. In design, we're going to have to be careful. But we only have until 2021 projected by those who keep track of such things.
So I would like to say, Mr. Bauer, thank you very much, and Mr. Mora, because when we originally put this out there, you have delivered exactly what I had hoped to see, a really thoughtful evaluation of how we want to go about designing high school programs going forward. And I think you guys did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was for Carson.
We could stand up and tell you that you could call and say you had a standing ovation.
Okay. I don't know. Dr. Graham?
At this time, Mr. Ferguson and Ms. Turner, and I think we have a couple of principals that are going to be part of this. There's been a lot of talk about the effort to grow our inclusion model that we're trying to develop in this district, and so I thought it important for you all to hear, and Mr. Ferguson's going to be brief. I think he said he's got about 5 to 7 minutes worth of information, and then some testimonies from principals where it's working, and then questions you may have. And I've told you all individually, I'll say it out loud, we created a plan that was a 3-year plan. We are fairly certain it'll take longer than that. It's a phase-in. It in no way means every child is going to be in a mainstream class. So I'll start with that, and then I'll let Mr. Ferguson take it from there.
Again, board members and Dr. Graham. Today we'd just like to share some information regarding the progress our district has made to provide more inclusive opportunities for students with disabilities. I'll begin with some federal and state legislation, some district statistics, highlight our district inclusion plan, and then talk about some of the professional development and support we've provided to date, and then have the opportunity for some of our principals that have been leading this initiative to speak. So the first slide just really speaks to the federal legislation. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, in the Federal Register, the term inclusion is not used specifically, but it does refer to least restrictive environment. And it speaks to the fact that to the most appropriate extent possible, students with disabilities are to be educated in a regular classroom with the appropriate aids and supports along with non-disabled peers. The student's individual educational plan, the IEP, guides those decisions of what is appropriate for students. The second slide talks about our state statute and does refer to inclusion as students receiving education in the general education setting reflecting natural proportions in age-appropriate heterogeneous groups for both core academics and electives. The third slide is our Senate Bill 1180, which requires that every 3 years the district complete the best practices in inclusion internal assessment process, and this district went through that process in the spring of 2014. The next slide includes data from the 2014 District Profile Report for Improving Exceptional Student Education Services. The column on the left looks at the percentage of students served through that continuum of educational programs. The center column looks at percentages of comparable districts, and we're in a cohort group of size-alike and demographic-alike districts in the state. And the column to the right looks at state targets. So to kind of summarize this data, the data indicates that the percentage of students that are served in separate classrooms is 12% above comparable districts and about 14% above state targets. The next slide speaks to our inclusion plan for the district. This is the result of some work with a national inclusion consultant that we've been working with, as well as a district steering committee. Dr. Graham referenced the 3-year plan. It's actually a 5-year plan, which should make us all feel a little bit better with that. But within the first 3 years, all of the schools would be in the inclusion plan, starting to look at providing more inclusive opportunities. In years 4 and 5 would be the opportunity to build some sustainability and make some program improvements as a part of that. The plan is designed to be both flexible and fluid to meet the needs of individual schools, and I think that's really important. When you develop a plan, you have a plan in place, but you have the ability to be flexible. The next slide just talks about the guiding principles that were established through our district inclusion committee, our district plan. The idea of consistency and flexibility, ongoing professional development and support, targeting collaborative teaching, flexible scheduling, training in behavior, and universal design for learning strategies. The expansion of the full continuum of educational services and support, and finally, the alignment of the practices with our district priorities and our district strategic plan. The next slide talks about 7 strategies based upon the research on inclusion that talk about inclusive practices: the school culture, the celebration of diversity, the interdisciplinary collaboration, the collaborative teaching and planning, the active learning and student engagement, evidence-based practices, and expanded training and resources. This next graphic presents that full continuum that we're talking about of educational services. If you look at over on the left, we have that opportunity for students to be served within a general education classroom with support such as co-teaching, support facilitation, and resource services. And then on the right side, we have separate class and alternative placement. So the intent of least restrictive environment is to provide that full continuum of programs, supports, and services for students with disabilities. And this slide shows the proposed performance data of students with disabilities as indicated through our value-added model, our VAM model. And this is based on past learning gains of students. But the interesting thing is that it shows that our students with disabilities make more learning gains in the areas of reading and math and algebra than non-disabled students. And then the last slide just shows, reflects the training and support that's been provided across the district so far this school year to support moving to more inclusive environments. So we've provided a lot of training and support. At this time, we're very pleased to have a couple of our principals that have been part of our Phase 1 schools. We have Dr. Marcia Burr and Mr. Dave Burgess. And I'd like to just invite them up if they would be willing to speak just a minute about their experiences as with inclusion this year.
Good afternoon. I am Marcia Burr. If you don't know me, I've met most of you out at school or in various situations, circumstances in the district. I'm the principal at Hearns Marsh Elementary School in the East Zone. We were a center site for the IA, Intensive Academic Program, in the East Zone, one of, I think, 3 or 4. I'm not sure which at this point. And really, we jumped on board with inclusion to fill a number of basic needs, but the first was overcrowding, because we would start with 45 students in designated with the IA label. That meant they were supposed to be receiving services in a separate classroom, and that grew and grew and grew, and the numbers became too much to manage. So after consulting with Christy Coots and some other members down here last year, we decided to begin to push out more and more students that were able and ready to be in a gen ed classroom with support. And so this year, after the success we experienced with the limited version last year, we decided to jump full force into it. And so at this point, we have 2 standalone classrooms, 2 separate facilities that house the kids that are not ready to go out full-time. Some of those students do go out for certain subjects and certain periods of the day. And we have a support classroom. Those are the kids who have a ESE resource teacher that comes in and works with them from every grade K through 5. And we have a full co-teaching classroom in grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that involves 2 adults in the building, in the classroom at all times during the day, working with students, working with, you wouldn't know which students they were working with. They work with them all equally. There was a little bit of angst, as you can imagine. Excuse me. When we started, teachers were scared. What are we going to do? What if they can't make it? What if the behaviors are such that it interferes with what we're doing? Parents were a little bit of angst, some of them, but I can tell you for certainty that there wasn't a bit of angst amongst the students that we were putting out. They were excited. They were happy. They were so proud to be back in a gen ed classroom with their peers. And the successes that we've had, the most severe behaviors that everybody was nervous about, no referrals this year at all from any of those kids when they were in separate class that we're constantly having to be dealt with in the office. None, not a one. And some of, as Dr. Ferguson just mentioned, some of our typically IA kids have made the most gains in the classroom. As a matter of fact, 2 of our 5th graders actually just scored the highest score in the class with 6 ESE students and 17 Gen Ed students. They scored the highest on the last concept test for language arts. So it's worked for us. It's been a journey, and we're not perfect yet. We're still tweaking things. As Dr. Ferguson said, it's fluid, and sometimes we have to adjust. But it's been a real great success for us in our building.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Dave?
You have to be excited when you have the opportunity to hear some of the comments that are being shared. Most of what Marcia shared, we can duplicate that as well. And I could talk forever, so I spared everyone a little bit of relief, and I wrote a few things down. So I'm going to share from that perspective. But talk about a powerful scenario. Now, we're talking about inclusion, but co-teaching, and I'm not just talking students with disabilities. I'm talking gifted students as well. It's really important that we hear that. So 2013-14 was a banner year for Patriot, and that we protected and we enhanced the emotional intelligence of all of our students. That's a key ingredient, because if you don't have the emotional stability, there's no learning that's going to take place. We really did that several different ways, but the co-teaching environment, which we've established at each grade level, and we actually have 2 classrooms set up in 3rd grade, was a big reason for this. We created the least restrictive environment at Patriot Elementary, and we have students that are classified as functional skills that are pushed in for an hour and a half, plus much, much more. But probably the other part I have to share with you is the VAM scores, as Mr. Ferguson, Dr. Ferguson spoke about briefly. Not only is that one of the highest for us, our teachers were very successful in that. We have many teachers on the waiting list because they want to participate in a co-teach environment as well. I'm sure the VAM scores had something to do with that, but that request was actually before the VAM scores came out. So very proud of that part. I do want to share some results for you, and really dealing with some data, and let's hit where the rubber hits the road. And as you listen to a few of these things, it might ring a bell. Patriot had the greatest increase in math proficiency, highest in the district. That was proficiency. We also had the highest math gains and the lowest 25%. We had the highest in the district and the outstanding learning gains overall. We moved our school grade from a C, and the only reason it was a C is we were protected by the state. It really numerically was a D, from a D to an A. Our 4th grade co-teach classroom that had 32 students at one point in time, with 18 of them listed as special needs students, had 97% gains in mathematics. That's unheard of, not only at the district level, but at the state level.
Co-teaching has made a huge, major impact on Patriot, as well as Marcia and many other schools that have participated in it. And not only there, but so many other pieces of the pie have opened doors. At Patriot, we now have a club called the Patriot Pioneers, which is a group of fifth graders that have been trained on how to drive a wheelchair, if you will. What has happened with that is now our students that have been confined in a specific classroom are now out and about. One of them, for example, is spending an hour and a half in a fifth grade classroom with her age-like peers and thriving in there. And what the problem is, we have to continue to update her IEP because she's going beyond what we have on the IEP. Great problems. I'll hold off there. I could talk forever about what's happening at Patriot with our teachers, with our students. More importantly, what I can share is the emotional intelligence is very alive and well, very strong, and a great reason for that is due to a co-teach environment that our entire school has taken on responsibility for. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I also would like to recognize Rachel Taylor, and she's in the audience, and I'm not going to ask Rachel to speak. But Rachel has been instrumental in leading professional development and training in our district in the area of collaborative teaching. And we're approaching about 400 teachers in our district that have been through collaborative teaching. And that's a co-teaching training where a general education teacher and a special education teacher go through training together to increase their ability to collaborate, both in teaching and planning together. And our goal is by the end of the school year, through the summer, we'll have over 700 teachers in our district trained in collaborative teaching. She's also leading the flexible scheduling training, which is really where a school has the ability to look at the resources that are provided to them and look at ways that those resources can be focused to meet the needs of all of the students. And so by the end of the school year, I think Rachel will have reached all of our Phase 1 and Phase 2 schools in that specific training that will enable them to start to look at how do they expand those inclusionary opportunities. So thank you so much, and I think we'll, yes, Dr. Graham?
I just want to insert, this is also happening at secondary. Clayton Simmons was
Yes,
here.
Clayton
Apparently
had
to go.
another appointment, but
Yeah.
Clayton came and, yep.
Yeah, so that it's not just elementary. You heard from 2 elementary principals, but it is happening at secondary level as well.
No, but thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pam.
Well, I just
Revere.
have to say that I had the pleasure of visiting Harns Marsh Elementary. And if you were to walk in and to any of the classrooms, you have no clue. You see all of the students working together. You see all of the students feeling embraced by each other. And that's a very good thing. So I applaud all of you all of those who are out there moving forward. And I remember many years ago when we were supposed to be really moving forward with inclusion, and we just didn't go very far. And being given the directive, we are moving forward with inclusion, we are moving forward, and nothing happening. And I'm just really glad to see that it's happening, and most importantly, that we're providing the services for the teachers, so they feel that comfort level and that support.
I can't add anything to that. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. Appreciate your work.
And I'll just repeat, I've given you each a private invitation, but these schools are anxious for you all to visit, so anytime you want to go, I would be happy to take you.
Okay, board member discussion. We have not put on the agenda board member comments, but I think we would like to have the opportunity to make some comments. And I'm going to start with Mr. Teuber.
Thank you. Just trying to pull my notes up here.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to give the legislative update. We did not find a sponsor for our bill, but we have been in discussion with our legislative delegation to support it if we can find a complementary rider on this is for our capital half-mill restoration portion. As far as our initiative that we try to do is to eliminate the 11th grade language arts exam. Good news, our lobbyist actually had a session with the governor's office and spoke about some of the issues, what we wanted with our reduced testing. And I'm not going to say it's all because of our lobbyist and efforts, but the governor did execute an executive order 1155 today or yesterday, I believe, and eliminated the 11th grade English language arts exam. So it's a step in the right direction. It's one exam. We still have a lot of end of course testing and a lot of it still to look at and reduce. We also have the big issue that we hope the legislature addresses and embraces, and that is the repercussions and applying an assessment tool in a punitive nature and a measure to actually use as our teachers in our evaluation process, especially with the lack of validity that has been shown with the current testing exam, and not having it validated to be used as anything other than just a normative test to be able to move forward and get that normalized. So we're continuing to work with that. I will have at our next meeting, I will actually print out all the current legislation that relates to education, have it to you before the meeting so you can read it and then bring me questions and we can address that in a more pragmatic manner. That's all I have.
You don't want to bring up the calendar?
Oh, well, there was something about you're talking about for the school board school calendar. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So there was also the issue where Collier actually did a dual schedule and to be able to look at the legislation and whether or not we could be.
No.
Oh, not talking about.
I'm talking about the annual report calendar.
No, I don't know.
We're
the calendar.
converting, we're moving from one format to another. I am
thank
so
you.
sorry. Did I
Thank
not
you.
make, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm sorry. That's okay. That's all right. I can pick up on it. Board members, we used to, every year we do an annual report. It's required by statute to give a report, and we would provide it. And way back when, Ms. Dozier, in her infinite wisdom, said, when you get an annual report, you get it in the mail, you look at it, and it goes in the dumpster, and you really don't spend a lot of time looking at it other than you've lived through the pictures. So we actually changed the format, and it was a little bit more costly, but we actually put it into a format where it's a calendar. So every month, you flip it, and there's new data about the school board or the school district. And the advantage that we had was it has all the school days off, which we know is you need a decoder ring to know that most of the time, or your kids tell you, I'm off tomorrow, and you're like, really? And so that gave them something to put on their wall or put on the refrigerator, and so it keeps our annual report in front of them at least through the whole school year, and typically, it's a pretty nice looking calendar, so they kept it, and so I thought it was a very worthwhile investment. I know it costs more. Last year we went away from it, and again, because of financial reasons, I'm sure. But I just wanted to address to the board is, how do we feel for the superintendent, for the direction is, do you think it's worth the money to spend? Because to me, I think it's a worthwhile when we talk about bang for the buck as far as advertising dollars. I think it's something that, I had people asking for the calendar. You couldn't give away a regular annual report. People were asking for the calendar. So, it was really almost a pull type of delivery than it is to send it out and it just goes in the trash. So I wanted to bring that up, and thank you, Ms. Morgan, and see exactly how you guys felt and if we could give the superintendent direction maybe to use that as a calendar.
Mrs. Dozier.
Well, and I will say that I was very concerned when we went back, or when we left the process that we had been used to for so many years of having the calendar. And because when we go out and speak to civic organizations and when we speak to different clubs in the community, one of the things, it's always nice to give everybody a little gift when you go and speak somewhere. They looked forward to that. And I would have business people, thank you so much. This tells me when y'all are going to be in school and when you're not going to be in school, and it helps us to plan, blah, blah, blah. The tool itself and the information that it had in it was incredible. And the fact that it also included the legislative platform that we had. It also had a list of all of our legislators in it to where parents knew who to contact. The information that was in it was absolutely just so, I felt like it was so valuable, and I know that people, parents that I knew, they'd say, I keep this in my kitchen. I keep it on our bulletin board because it has so much information. If I need to contact somebody, it's got the website on it, if telephone numbers. I don't think I ever heard any negative comment except the fact of the cost of the matter. Can y'all afford to do this? Because it was my hope that at one point we would be able to give one to every single family in the district. And we were, at that time, we were looking for sponsors in the community to sponsor it so that we could do that, because, we have to put out that, what is that, I think a parent plan or something, the parent guide. That's mandated. We have to put that out every year. And, we even talked about incorporating the parent plan within the annual report. And I think the last annual report, we actually put our parent plan in that. So we tried to make it as inclusive as possible. So, without beating this horse to death, I definitely think that it was very worthwhile, and it's really nice when you go to these luncheons, like one at the foundation or one at the, no offense, Marshall, but when you go to one at the hospital and you get this beautiful annual report, and I have to tell you, where does it go? I put it in file 13 in my office. But these calendars, they don't go in file 13, but instead they go up on walls, they go up on bulletin boards, they are used regularly as and have a purpose. So, if you're asking for support of it, I'm definitely saying that I think that's the route we ought to go.
May I?
Oh, sure.
A couple of questions. Was there, the information I got was back to 2007, and at that time only 750 were printed. Was there a time when everybody got one?
Well, what we did was we actually went to the newspaper to see if they could print them in the type
Newsprint?
of print, the newsprint or the glossy stuff that they do. We looked at all different ways to try to get them printed economically, and I think that there may have been more than one run sometimes, because we would give them, that was another thing that we would take to legislators, and I will tell you that was where I heard the complaints about the cost, was at the legislature. When we went up there and they'd say, how can you, afford this? And so, but I think that what you're looking at may be one run, but I know when we first started it, and I can't remember the year that it was first started, but I know that we had I don't know how many of them printed. And I don't think we ever got to putting one in the hands of every family in the district, but that was what I think our goal was years ago, but we never got there where we needed to be.
The rationale, just for the two new board members, the rationale for the change last year was we're trying to do what's trending, and
Trying to do what's what?
what's trending, and what a lot of districts are doing.
Well, if you're doing what's trending, you want to look at some of the other districts, because a lot of the other districts followed our lead and copied our format once we did that.
Well, and so we've looked again this year just to see if I was mistaken last year. And you all, if you want a calendar, it is going to cost more. And I don't know how we would do 88,000, to be honest. But here's where we are. Hillsborough does a 6-page report. Orange does a formal report. It's about 20-plus pages. Pasco, Sarasota, Miami-Dade, Collier, Marion, and Polk don't do an annual report. They do a financial report. And then in Polk, the preschool does its own report, and the charter schools do their own report. Volusia has an annual report. They run it. It's a November to October report, so they do it in November. And it's black and white. There's no graphics. It's 51 pages. And Miami does, like I said, they do, all those that I said don't do an annual report, do an annual financial report that's available. What we did is, in the report, we made it so that every page was a PDF, so as you all go out, if there's only one topic you want to talk about, you can just have that page printed. If you want to take the whole report, what we did last year, we printed 800 of them, and we gave, I think, 50 to 100 to each of you. I think we made available. I forget how many we gave you. And we put them in the board office, and you all could take them. And then we made sure schools had some. So we only printed 800 last year. And when I said there was no, I know I frustrated Mrs. Dozier when I said there was no negative comment. Ms. Dozier was very clear last year. She was not happy that we weren't doing a calendar, but when I
I
pulled.
never actually saw the finished product last year. I never had any in my possession.
Wow. Well, they were, I'm sorry, because they were in the board office.
I never saw any.
Okay.
I would always ask for them when I knew we had a calendar, but I never even knew that we had any in our office.
So you all, I just need direction, which I think, and I know Mr. Toiber had written, said he wanted to have this conversation, and I know that's why Ms. Morgan brought it up. So I need direction. We're ready to go, except for we did change the pictures, and I take ownership of that. And we're ready to go. The other thing is, since we're having this conversation, we could do it earlier. We could get it out sooner. Orange County, they put last year's high school grades in theirs. And we waited for this year's, which is part of our delay because we didn't get them till just before winter break. So if you want it out sooner, and I haven't heard that that was an issue, but if you wanted it out sooner, and if we were going to do a calendar, we'd want it to be ready to go in January, then.
Number, actually.
Yes, so we'd be hard pressed to get the high school grades in there. The current ones, we'd have to put the former year. So those are the things I just need to know what you're thinking.
Ms. LaRiviere?
I think the calendar is great. Here's my question. There are so many people that are doing things via technology rather than, for example, we no longer post a wall calendar in our home. Much to my husband has a harder time adjusting to that, but we have it other places. I'm assuming that since it's done in PDF, it's available for people to print out. If we did it in a calendar format, they would still be able to print out the calendar if they so chose, correct? That's just a curiosity.
Yeah.
And so my thought is, we could do a calendar. If we wanted to, we could do a calendar, decide how much the limit would be on how many would be printed, and then have it available at the different school websites and on our district website, and people would be able to print out what they need.
What a great idea.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Well, but I just would like to weigh in also. I saw no use for the calendar. We have ParentLink. When I go out and speak, I love the new PDF format where I have handouts, and I have asked twice for, I don't see her, for Ms. Chandler to make the handouts available, because that's what I like to do. And I frankly don't have anything to do with calendars, paper calendars anymore, and I don't sense that any disappointment that I don't have them. So
I just know, I hesitate in printing them out for every household because I do see a lot of those going into file 13. I don't know that all of those would be appreciated by everyone.
Oh, I agree.
So I guess I'm curious as to what the cost would be if we ran another batch of 800 like we did last year if it was done in the calendar format.
Well, I can tell you the no calendar format, 800 was $2,262. And in 2007-8, 750, and was it calendar in 2007-8? Was $4,176. So even, what's that,
It's almost,
7 years ago?
Yeah, it's almost twice the cost.
So we can get a price, but that's just to give you a comparison.
personally, I like your idea. If we can just format it so that people can print it out if they want it. But board members? She's
Well, the
looking.
news press likes to partner with so many different groups. Maybe they would like to partner with us and run that and be the sponsor of the calendar, what our run is. Maybe they'd be willing to do that to offset the cost of the initial run that you do, and then, like Pam says, do the PDF on the website, not only on the district website, but on each school website, so that parents could print their own.
And if it's something you like to give out, I would just need somebody, how many would you want for each of you? Because you really are the ones who use it the most.
I've
You
never
don't have to
used
tell
it.
me that today, but we'd need to know that, so we could run
See,
enough.
we've never had it since you've been here.
I know, but I've never
Well,
felt the need for
I
it other
remember
than
last year,
data sheets.
Mary did pass out the annual report at one of the BUPAC meetings. So I don't know how they got into the hands of each of the board members last year.
They were put in the board office with a
We're
note
just
that they were,
put- okay,
we'd sent an email
so-
that they were there, I think.
So then,
Go ahead. I just know I never handed them out to everybody. I spoke and had some with me. I would bring 20 or 25, and they'd be gone. I mean, so I'd say I got a calendar. I mean, and people got to know that when I spoke, they'd come to me before I get started and say, hey, can I have the one? And I'd be out before I got started. Just because those people that come for a public education, because we had all sorts of great facts. What's our breakdown ethnicity wise? What's our free and reduced lunch? What's our scores? I mean, all that information is all in one spot, and it's not something that they got to go look and find because it's on their wall, so they can flip to it at any time, back and forth. And it was just. There's a lot of people, but again, that was back then. Now everybody's now moving to the media. More people are now looking with their smartphones. So,
And the
does the app cover that?
And the content, I think the content is pretty similar obviously the calendar's not there, but the content is similar. It's our ethnicity, it's our grade, it's our achievement, there's a whole 1 or 2 pages of district wins, highlights of things that happened last year.
Okay. So where are we?
okay, well, how fast do we want to print it out?
Well, that's the
Because-
other question. Do you want a calendar this year, even though it's
Yeah, at this
it's
point,
February.
I think at this point, I think the report, I think, needs to go out for this year because it's already in
Right.
February. So I think for this year, I think you need to get a report out.
And then maybe what we could do then is research, maybe we make some calendar, some non-calendar, and then then those that want the calendar to give out, we can do that, and then it could be also whatever we print, obviously, is going to be in a format that can be put on the website and through the app, and we have all kinds of ways for people to get our information now.
Okay.
Would that serve the purpose for this year?
I think so.
Look at it for next year.
Well, I do know that there's a lot of work. I would hate to see and I don't want to say, I would hate to see a shoddy calendar put together and it not be the quality product that we used to have. And I know how much time and energy went into putting that calendar together. And it was a lot of different departments. It was a lot of schools and a lot of people that came together to put that product together. And I think to try to put one together very quickly now, I don't think it would be a good product. And I would hate to see us put out a less than professional
Agreed.
product. So at this time, I would say we have to go with what we have. However, I think in the future, I would like to see us look at using that format, whether we put it in our app, whether we put it on the websites of each school, and maybe print a few. But I think that it does, the calendar and having all your information in one place serves as a great tool. And I know, I hear you say that you never missed one, because parents, I heard compliments all the time from parents, community members, when they wanted to go to, even our legislators, even though they talk about the cost, they would say, this document provides me with all the information I need to know about Lee County when we go to education meetings up here in the legislature. So the material that was in that meeting, was in that calendar, was absolutely phenomenal. And I was distressed when we took it away last year, and maybe that's why I didn't go and look for the annual report, because I basically knew what was in the annual report. And this year I was really distressed when I saw that we were using the previous board and not the current board, because, that's just, I think in the business world, in the private sector, as well as the public sector. That's, that's something that's unheard of, and I don't know where that came about or how that came about, but that was certainly a faux pas, I think.
That's been adjusted.
And,
Well, in light of time, can I just make a suggestion that we put maybe 5 minutes on a calendar in October, November to revisit this conversation so that the Communications Department knows whether or not we're going to do a calendar? Does that make sense?
I'm going to say August or September.
Okay, well, you tell me.
I would agree with the
Okay,
earlier
we'll-
date.
We'll get
August,
on an agenda.
September? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. Mrs. LaRiviere, any comments?
I actually had a report, but I'm going to save it for the next briefing meeting, but I do have some information that I would like to ask Mr. Martin to review with all of you. It pertains to the pull from this evening's consent agenda, and I would ask that he entertain that at this time and explain it and go over it with all of you. My list keeps growing on my report. And see, it's important for us to give reports.
That's why
too.
you have to.
I'm going to put it on the calendar, like we're going to finish all of our meetings at a certain
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, that's good. That makes sense.
I don't need them. I have all mine right here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Oh. Got it? Yeah, but this is for conversation, I guess.
I've provided you two documents, and let me explain to you the source of these groups of documents. The first is, which has a chart on the first page with the name Lisa Deeker. This is the attachment that was sent to you Monday by Dr. Graham. It had 6 pages included. And the other document are contracts for Dr. Deeker that I received. Ms. Dozier expressed concern about this matter and asked me to attempt to obtain contracts from staff that the school district had with Dr. Deeker, and these are the contracts that personally I was able to obtain last Friday, the last one being received actually yesterday afternoon. So, Mrs. Dozier asked that I explain to you some details that I saw in these documents. If you take a look first at the documents provided to you by Dr. Graham today, you'll see in the chart that the first contract is 7/15/2014 for $3,000, and that is the first document that you see just behind there. The next document is for $3,000 for August 4, August 5, and that is the second document that you receive, that you see in the stack. The third document, on the chart, it indicates 9/16/17/2014. If you look at the third document, you'll see 9/16/17/2014, but then a second date of 10/22/2014. You'll also see the amount of that contract is $9,600 rather than $6,000.
Oh, okay.
When I first observed that, one thought I had was that the number should have been $9,600 rather than $6,000. And of course, if that was the case, then the total would exceed $25,000. But you'll see if you turn to the next page that there's not a contract with the date of 10/22/2014. I asked for explanation from Mr. Ferguson, who explained to me today that the fourth entry, the entry on the chart indicating 10/22/2014, an expense of $4,500, is the second period on the third contract. As you see, the third contract has the dates 10/22/2014. So it's that second expense. Of course, the difference is that when you add 6 and 4,500, you get to 10,500 rather than 9,600. I asked Mr. Ferguson about that. His response was an acknowledgement that the contract had been overspent. The next document, well, the next entry on the chart you see is 11/22/2014, an expenditure of $1,500, and that's the next document that you see there. It's not a contract, it's an invoice. And then finally, you have 2/17/2015 for $3,000 on the chart. And the last document you have is a contract with that date for that expense. So if you would, set that group of documents to the side, keeping an eye on the chart that's on the front. And then take a look at the other documents that I handed to you. Again, these are the documents that I was provided when I made that request for the contracts that supported the expenditure of $24,000 to this point, as was described in the agenda item. You'll see that the first document there is, again, the 7/15/2014 contract for $3,000, the same as you saw in the document provided to you by Dr. Graham. There are 2 pages to help avoid confusion. You'll see there are 2 pages to that document. The contract is actually there twice, the first one being signed by the first 3 parties and the second one signed by the consultant herself. That's the same document. I had those stapled together. The second document is the August 4/5/2014 for $6,000, the same as that you received from Dr. Graham. The third document is the 9/16/17/2014, but also the 10/22/23/2014 document with an expense in the contract of $9,600. Again, that's the same third document you received from Dr. Graham. The next document you see is a contract with a beginning date of 10/22/2014, running to 6/30/2015. This document was not in the group that Dr. Graham supplied to you. I did ask Mr. Ferguson about this contract, because my initial reaction looking at this is, of course, that this was an additional $3,000 expenditure, which would then push the expenditure to $27,000. Mr. Ferguson explained to me that actually the fifth document in the group that was provided by Dr. Graham, the invoice with the 11/22/2014 date, is an invoice for payment under this contract. And so $1,500 of this $3,000 is included in that calculation on the chart to get to $24,000. So I then asked the question, what about the other $1,500 from this contract that's been expended? And Mr. Ferguson told me he'd have to look into that. The last document is the same. The 2/17/2015 document is the same as that you received from Dr. Graham. I'm sorry, that would be the next to last. The last page that you should have in the documents that I was provided is the contract that was coming forward tonight for approval, which has the date 2018, 19, 15, and then a couple of additional dates for a total of $18,000. When I spoke to Mr. Ferguson today, he explained to me that Dr. Deeker's services generally cost $3,000 per day, and that's why we would get to this calculation of $18,000, because there are 6 days there, and 6 times 3, of course, would get us to 18. The one point that you would want to observe about this contract is that the first date is 2/18/19 of 2015, a date that has already passed. Assuming that this service was provided, the cost presumably would be that $6,000, which of course gets us over $24,000 or over $25,000. though the board hasn't approved an expenditure over $25,000 at this point, and of course, the service has already been provided. Whatever the vote the board may have taken on an agenda item presented to them, if the service has been provided, the payment would have to be made. That's the information I have. I don't know if there's anything else Mrs. Dozier wanted me to address.
Well, you know, in fact, before this was pulled, I had actually questioned this, and I wanted to make sure that everybody had the same piece of information that I have. And we have a ceiling that cannot be spent of over $25,000 without board approval. And you cannot incur any expenses without coming before the board when you have any expenses, or even if you anticipate any expenses over that, you've got to come for the board first. And so I just wanted all of you to be aware of this. So as we move forward with this, while the tasks, I believe, have been completed, because I do believe that those 2 dates in February were in fact, I think this person was here, that now we have a responsibility to pay this person, but you also need to be aware that these expenses were incurred before there was board approval on it.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. I have no comments. Mr. Martin?
I have none, thank you.
Dr. Graham?
Real quickly, I think this, you'll want this information for tonight, should it come up. The Publisher Showcase is February 26th, and we have advertised that through Parent Link email to all parents. The Curriculum Advisory Committee has been invited. It's been on the district website. It has been tweeted, and there's been a press release. So, and there's also a parent community member application on the website through SurveyMonkey that we are using. The dates of the trainings are there. The topics, the subjects that are going to be adopted this year are ESOL, world languages, that's Spanish and French, health and physical education, and honors math, which is algebra, algebra 2, and geometry. So as people apply, if enough people want to do Spanish and enough people want to do French, that'll be 2 separate committees. If it turns out that there aren't that many, then we would just do a world languages. They would do both. Same with the math. They would, that will either have an algebra committee, an algebra 2 committee, geometry committee, or it will be one committee that does all the honors math. But those are the only things being adopted this year. So that's what will be shown at the showcase, those things that are being adopted. So I wanted you to have that information. The membership requirements you all had talked about, you want at least one community member on each committee. We have put no limit at this point. We're going to see who expresses interest in being involved, and also the materials can, the student materials can also be viewed online. So there's plenty of ways for people to see. So that happens on Thursday, and wanted you to be aware of that in case it comes up tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we're going to adjourn at 5:18, and we'll see you all back here at 6 o'clock.